He sent me a bill for hospitality in my own home. You won't believe how far I went to reclaim my life and expose a shocking truth. I had always considered myself the backbone of the family, the one you could lean on. My name, Patricia, had become synonymous with reliability, warmth, and unconditional love. My late husband, Thomas, always said I was the heart of our home, and I tried to be just that for my children, especially for my son, John. He always received the lion's share of my care and attention, especially after he decided to pursue his business. I always supported him, even when he made risky investments, lent him money without asking too many questions, and of course, always opened the doors of my home, which Thomas and I had built brick by brick over 40 years. My house, filled with memories of laughter, holidays, and cozy evenings, was a sanctuary for him. I even let him use one of the rooms as a home office for his startup. I made sure his office was in perfect order, and even helped with paperwork when he was swamped. I thought I was doing everything to make his life easier and help him succeed. Just last week, I spent the entire day completely immersed in my favorite hobby, creating miniature teddy bears. My fingers deftly worked with soft plush, tiny bead eyes, and embroidery floss. I was stitching miniature paws and noses, imagining how these bears would bring joy to children at the local orphanage, where I regularly delivered them. Pieces of fabric, threads, and stuffing were spread out around me on the table, and I felt absolutely happy, forgetting everything else. As I, tired but content, set aside another finished bear, the phone rang. It was John, my dear son. I expected to hear words of gratitude or at least a simple, "How are you, Mom?" But what I heard made me drop a freshly sewn button right onto the floor. "Mom, I've been calculating," he began in his usual business-like tone, which always slightly annoyed me. "Considering how much time you spend at my house, using the electricity, water, internet, not to mention the food I'm constantly buying for you." A warning bell went off in my head. "John, what on earth are you talking about?" I asked, trying to make a joke of it, though my heart had already begun to pound uneasily. "Well, Mom, business is business. I've sent you a bill for hospitality. I think it's fair. After all, you don't want to be a burden, do you?" My world turned upside down. This house was mine, built with our own hands, and he sent me a bill for hospitality in my own home? For food he supposedly constantly bought for me? For the electricity in my own home? I felt a cold chill run through me. Not anger, no. It was something much deeper. Betrayal. From the one I carried in my womb, whom I raised, pouring my soul into him. His voice sounded indifferent, as if he were discussing a transaction with a stranger, not his own mother. "John, are you serious?" My voice trembled. "Mom, I'm serious. The bill will be in your email. I think it's a perfectly adequate amount considering everything." He hung up, leaving me alone in the living room, surrounded by my unfinished bears and a chilling emptiness. I opened my email, and the figure on the bill made me flinch. The amount was astronomical, considering my modest savings. Burden. You don't want to be a burden. Those words echoed in my head. Did he really consider me a burden? Was I being charged for living in my own home? For being a mother? My heart ached with pain. But something inside me, an old, forgotten feeling, slowly but surely began to ignite. I didn't know what I would do, but one thing I understood clearly: I would not let him break me. And that, my friend, is where it gets really interesting. This is just the tip of the iceberg, believe me. You simply have to find out what happened next when Patricia faced even greater injustice. You won't believe what she did. So if you're curious about how this incredible drama unfolded and how she put everyone in their place, stick around. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing. The morning after John's audacious call, I woke up with a feeling that was a peculiar mix of profound hurt and a simmering, almost exhilarating determination. The bitterness from his hospitality bill had settled deep in my bones, but beneath it, a spark of defiance had ignited. This wasn't just about money. This was about dignity, about the years I'd sacrificed, the love I'd poured into him, only to be reduced to a line item on an invoice. A burden, he'd said? Ah, the sheer audacity. I scoffed, a dry, humorless sound that felt strange in the quiet of my own kitchen. I wasn't some helpless old woman. Not yet. I made myself a strong cup of coffee, black as my mood, and sat down at the kitchen table, pulling out my old laptop. It was slow, a bit clunky, but it had served me well for years. My first mission, that shell company John had mentioned in his email. A quick online search, and there it was. Alpha Solutions LLC. Generic name, generic address in a strip mall, no easily traceable owners. Classic John, always operating in the shadows like a back alley magician trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat, only his rabbit was my peace of mind. My fingers, usually busy with soft plush and tiny beads for my teddy bears, now danced across the keyboard with the newfound purpose, a frantic energy I hadn't felt in years. Then my mind started connecting the dots, or rather, the digital breadcrumbs John had scattered. He had been overly insistent on getting my digital signatures for various documents over the past year. "It's for the new business venture, Mom, just a formality. You know how these things are," he'd always chirped, flashing that charming smile that used to melt my heart. And like a fool, I'd signed. Every single time. Sometimes he'd even come over, laptop in hand, guiding my trembling fingers to click agree or confirm on forms that flashed on the screen too quickly for my eyes to fully comprehend. He'd even helped me set up a new, more secure email account, assuring me it was for my own protection against online scams. Ah, the delicious, bitter irony. He was the scam. The realization hit me like a cold splash of water, leaving me gasping. Every helpful gesture, every urgent request now felt like a calculated step in his elaborate scheme to bleed me dry. My stomach churned, a volatile mix of anger and a growing, sickening dread. What else had I unwittingly signed away? What other traps had he laid for his doting, supposedly naive mother? The thought sent a violent shiver down my spine. This wasn't just about a ridiculous hospitality bill. It was about something far more sinister, far more extensive. It was about protecting everything Thomas and I had worked for, everything we had built, brick by painstakingly placed brick, over 40 years. It was about defending my legacy from my own flesh and blood. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling slightly, and dialed Martha's number. Martha, my rock, my voice of reason, and my longtime friend and lawyer. She's no nonsense, sharp as a tack, and doesn't suffer fools gladly, especially not those who mess with her friends. Her calm, collected voice on the other end of my swirling storm of emotions was a welcome anchor. "Martha, honey, you're not going to believe what my ungrateful son John has done now," I began, my voice tight with a suppressed fury that threatened to crack. I recounted the whole sordid tale. The ludicrous bill, the shadowy Alpha Solutions LLC, and my burgeoning fears about the papers I had signed without proper scrutiny. Martha listened in silence, her quietness growing heavier with each word I uttered. I could almost hear the gears turning in her sharp legal mind. "Patricia," she finally said, her tone a careful blend of disbelief and deep concern, "are you telling me you signed legally binding documents without reading them thoroughly? Documents that your son presented to you?" Her question hung in the air, a stark reminder of my own foolish trust. "Well, yes. He made it sound so complicated and urgent, Martha. And he's my son. Who would think their own child would pull something like this?" My voice cracked slightly with a mixture of embarrassment and pain. Her sigh on the other end of the line was audible, a long, drawn-out sound that spoke volumes. "All right, Patricia, this is serious.
Send me everything you have. Every email, every digital signature request, every paper you vaguely remember signing for him. Anything and everything. We're going to dig into this. Something here smells fishier than a fish market on a sweltering August day. The conversation with Martha, while validating every gut feeling I had, also intensified my internal conflict. Doubt still gnawed at me. Had I truly misjudged my own son so profoundly? Was John, my sweet boy, capable of such blatant manipulation, such cold-hearted deceit? My heart ached at the thought, a raw, throbbing wound, but my resolve hardened with every beat. I wouldn't just sit back and let him walk all over me, not after everything. The bitter pill of betrayal was hard to swallow, but it was also a powerful, burning fuel. I systematically gathered every scrap of paper, every questionable digital signature request. This was no longer just about a ludicrous bill. It was about uncovering the truth, no matter how ugly, and fighting for what was rightfully mine.
Days turned into a blur of frantic digging, fueled by caffeine and a relentless desire for answers. Martha, true to her word, was a force of nature. She unleashed her legal team on Alpha Solutions LLC, and within days, the cracks in John's flimsy facade began to show. My kitchen table, once a haven for my teddy bear creations, was now buried under stacks of documents, official-looking papers, financial statements, and a confusing maze of legal jargon. I felt like a detective in my own home, piecing together fragments of a horrifying puzzle. Every new document unearthed a fresh wave of nausea, a deeper sense of bewilderment. How could my son, my John, be involved in something so complex, so deliberately opaque? The first real shock came when Martha called, her voice tight with professional restraint, but I could hear the underlying disbelief. "Patricia, you're not going to like this. Remember those documents about business structuring and digital signatures?" she asked, her voice deliberately slow, as if bracing me for impact. "Well, it seems John didn't just get you to sign off on minor business details. He got you to sign over power of attorney, a very broad one for certain financial dealings." My breath hitched in my throat. Power of attorney? To John? My mind reeled. I remember him saying something about needing to act on my behalf for investment opportunities, to streamline things. I'd vaguely thought it was about my retirement accounts, maybe, but to grant him full power of attorney? The thought sent a cold dread through me. It was like handing a child a loaded gun. What does that mean, Martha?" My voice was barely a whisper. "It means, Patricia, that he had the legal authority to act as you in certain financial matters, to buy, to sell, to borrow, to sign contracts, essentially to conduct transactions in your name. And it appears he wasted no time using it." My head spun. The betrayal deepened, transforming from a sting to a gaping wound. This wasn't just a hospitality bill. This was a full-blown invasion. My assets, my future, my very identity, all potentially compromised by my own son. The audacity of it, the sheer cold-blooded calculation. My hands clenched into fists, my knuckles white. Martha continued, her voice grim. "And it gets worse. Those investment opportunities he was so keen on, they seem to be, well, not so much investments as liabilities, large liabilities. We're finding multiple loans taken out under your name, or rather using your power of attorney. Some significant sums, Patricia, and these aren't small business loans. These are substantial personal loans linked to several of his less than successful ventures." My jaw dropped. Loans? In my name? The amount on the hospitality bill suddenly seemed like pocket change compared to the abyss of debt Martha was describing. My vision blurred. It was like watching my entire life savings, my security, vanish before my very eyes, pulled down by the undertow of his reckless ambition. But why?
I choked out, the word feeling foreign and absurd. Why would he do this? He has his own business, his own money. Martha sighed again, a tired, heavy sound. Patricia, it appears his business isn't quite as successful as he led you to believe. In fact, it seems to be deeply in debt, and for some time now. These loans, they seem to be an attempt to prop up a failing enterprise, using your credit, your assets as collateral. He's been living a financial lie, and you, my dear, were unwittingly providing the foundation for it. The pieces clicked into place, horrifyingly. All those times he'd talked about his big deals and imminent breakthroughs. It was all a smokescreen. He wasn't building a business. He was building a house of cards, and now that house was threatening to collapse on me. This is the moment of truth. We are on the brink of the real bombshell, my friend. What's about to happen will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about Patricia's son.
The revelation of the power of attorney and the loans taken in my name hit me with the force of a freight train. I felt lightheaded, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. My own son? A criminal? It seemed impossible, yet the evidence was piling up like dirty laundry. But Martha wasn't done. "There's more, Patricia," she said, her voice dropping to a serious, almost conspiratorial whisper. "These loans, they're tied to entities we can't quite trace back to John directly. They're registered through a complex web of holding companies, some even offshore. It's almost as if someone else is orchestrating this, someone with a much deeper understanding of financial maneuvering." My blood ran cold. An unseen hand? Was John not just a deceitful son, but a pawn in a larger, more sinister game? The thought was terrifying, yet it also offered a strange, twisted comfort. Perhaps he wasn't entirely evil. Perhaps he was manipulated. This flicker of hope, however, was quickly extinguished by the cold, hard facts Martha continued to lay out. "We found something else, Patricia. Something quite extraordinary. A series of large anonymous transfers from these holding companies. Not to John, but from them, directly into an account that, surprisingly, is in your name." "My name?" I gasped, utterly bewildered. But I haven't received any large sums of money. My personal bank accounts were always modest, carefully managed." "Exactly," Martha replied, a hint of frustration in her voice. "This account, it's a dormant one, an old savings account you opened years ago, barely used. He must have gained access through that power of attorney. The transfers are substantial, Patricia. We're talking millions. And the money? It's almost immediately transferred out again, usually to other untraceable accounts, or to cover what appear to be John's gambling debts." Gambling? Millions? My mind struggled to process this new, horrifying layer. John had always been secretive about his finances, but gambling? That was a vice I never suspected. "Gambling? My son?" I stammered, feeling like I was in a bad dream. "Yes, Patricia, the patterns are consistent with large, high-stakes gambling. Online casinos, private games. It seems his business ventures were primarily a front, a way to explain his attempts to get more money for his addiction. He was chasing losses, digging himself deeper, and then he found a convenient investor, you." The weight of it all pressed down on me, suffocating. The hospitality bill was just a cool joke, a petty insult compared to the scale of his deception. He wasn't just a failure. He was a desperate, addicted man who had systematically plundered his mother's savings account, using her trust as his weapon. My heart, which had been aching with betrayal, now felt utterly shattered. The image of the sweet, ambitious boy I had raised crumbled into dust. This wasn't just financial ruin. It was the ruin of my family, the destruction of a lifetime of love and trust. "Martha," I whispered, my voice hoarse with unshed tears. "What do we do? How can he have accumulated such debts without him knowing about them, let alone me?"
This was the biggest question that clawed at my mind. How could John be so deeply in debt, yet seemingly unaware of the full extent, as the initial hook implied? Martha paused, her next words delivered with a chilling gravity. That's the most unusual part, Patricia. The way these specific debts are structured, the way the payments are siphoned off, it suggests a very sophisticated, almost predatory lending operation. They're designed to keep the borrower in the dark about the true principal, the hidden fees, the compounding interest. It's a classic loan sharking tactic, but on a grand scale, cloaked in legitimate-looking paperwork. Someone is manipulating John, feeding his addiction, and systematically draining both his resources and yours. He truly might not know the full, terrifying scope of what he owes, because they've made sure he only sees what they want him to see, enough to keep him hooked and borrowing. The phone felt heavy in my hand, as if it contained the weight of all the world's sorrows. My son, caught in the web of his own making, manipulated by unseen forces, dragging me down with him. The realization was devastating. I had to act, not just for myself, but for him, to cut this cancerous growth out of our lives. This truly is the climax, my friend. The revelations are coming fast and furious, and what happens next will determine everything for Patricia and her son. You absolutely must stay tuned to witness the powerful conclusion of this harrowing story.
The days following Martha's revelations were a storm of emotions. My fury burned hot, a righteous indignation that eclipsed the pain. My son, caught in the clutches of predatory lenders, a puppet in a much larger, more insidious scheme. The image of John as a victim, however, quickly clashed with the cold, hard truth that he had, knowingly or unknowingly, used me as his personal ATM, his shield against his own destructive habits. It was a bitter pill to swallow, knowing that my boundless trust had been exploited so ruthlessly. My teddy bear crafting table remained untouched, replaced by a battlefield of legal documents and grim possibilities. Martha had advised caution, a strategic approach. We need more evidence, Patricia. We need to understand the full extent of this network before we make a move. Otherwise, they'll just vanish into the digital ether. But my patience had worn thin. I couldn't sit idly by while my life savings bled away and my son spiraled further into this abyss. I needed answers, face to face. I needed John to look me in the eye and explain this monstrous betrayal. The opportunity arose unexpectedly. John called, his voice surprisingly chipper, completely oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind. "Mom, great news! I'm finally closing that big deal I told you about. We should celebrate. Dinner, my treat, at the Gilded Spoon this Friday. Bring your appetite." The Gilded Spoon was an absurdly expensive restaurant, a place he'd often bragged about frequenting with high-value clients. My stomach clenched, but I forced a smile into my voice. "Oh, how wonderful, John. I'd love to. Friday it is." This was my chance, my stage. Friday evening arrived. I dressed carefully, not in my usual comfortable clothes, but in a tailored blazer and a string of pearls Thomas had given me. A quiet strength, a subtle defiance. As I entered the opulent dining room of the Gilded Spoon, John was already at a prime table, nursing a very expensive cocktail. He looked impeccably dressed, radiating an air of success that I now knew was a complete fabrication. His smile was wide, almost condescending. "Mom, you made it! Looking sharp!" "So, about that bill," he began, his voice dropping slightly, a hint of his earlier audacity. "Before we discuss any bills, John," I interrupted, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside me. "I believe we need to talk about something else, something far more substantial." His brow furrowed, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. "Mom, please, not here, not tonight. It's a celebration." I leaned forward, my gaze unwavering. "Oh, it will be a celebration, John. A celebration of truth.
From my handbag, I pulled out a thick envelope and slid it across the pristine white tablecloth towards him. Inside were printouts, the power of attorney document, the records of the fraudulent loans taken in my name, and the dizzying array of transfers to the dormant account. His face drained of color as he recognized the documents. His confident smirk vanished, replaced by a mixture of shock and dawning horror. What is this, Mom?" he stammered, his eyes darting around nervously, afraid someone might overhear. "This, John," I said, my voice rising slightly, clear and sharp, "is the evidence of your financial genius, the genius that allowed you to accumulate multi-million-dollar debts in my name, debts that you, apparently, didn't even know about." The last part, the "he didn't even know about" part from our title, was delivered with a sarcastic sting, a brutal irony. His eyes widened in genuine panic. What? What are you talking about? Debts in my name? That's impossible. Those were for Alpha Solutions, for my business deals. They were all legitimate." "Legitimate?" I scoffed, a truly derisive sound. "Is it legitimate to sign away your mother's life savings without her full knowledge? Is it legitimate to use her credit as collateral for your gambling addiction?" The word gambling hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. He flinched, his eyes darted to the side, then back to me, full of a terrified realization. How do you know about that?" he whispered, his face ashen. His composure had completely shattered. The sophisticated businessman was gone, replaced by a terrified little boy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Only this cookie jar held millions of dollars. "I know, John, because Martha knows, and Martha knows because I've been doing some digging. Your business is nothing but a house of cards built on my stolen assets, and now it's all about to crashing down." His face was a mask of utter devastation, mixed with a dawning fear that was far more profound than just being caught. He was seeing for the first time the true scope of the financial abyss that he was in, the abyss that he himself had created and then, unwittingly, deepened. "This is the exact moment everything changes, my friend. We're at the very peak of the crisis, and what happens in the next breath will send shockwaves through John's life, revealing the full extent of his hidden world. You absolutely cannot afford to miss how Patricia delivers the final, crushing blow that exposes all." The silence that followed my pronouncements in the gilded spoon was deafening, thicker than the expensive velvet drapes around us. John sat there, utterly exposed, his face a ghastly shade of white like a ghost at his own wake. The air, usually filled with the clinking of glasses and hushed conversations, now crackled with unspoken tension. He opened his mouth, then closed it, his perfectly tailored suit suddenly looking like a borrowed costume. The weight of his hidden debts, the full extent of his addiction, and the web of manipulation finally crushed his carefully constructed facade. "Mom, I didn't know it was that bad," he stammered, his voice raw, stripped of all its former arrogance. They kept telling me it was fine, just temporary setbacks. They made it seem like I was always just one big win away." His eyes, once so full of a calculated ambition, now held genuine fear and a profound, desolate confusion. He finally understood the chilling truth Martha had uncovered. He was not just a perpetrator, but also a victim of a system designed to exploit vulnerabilities. He hadn't known the true scope of his multi-million-dollar debts, and the predatory lenders had ensured he remained blissfully, ruinously ignorant. "They?" I pressed, my voice still firm, though a sliver of something akin to pity, cold and unwelcome, tried to worm its way into my heart. "Who are they, John? Names, details. Because now you don't just owe me, you owe the truth." This was the moment, the turning point. His entire life, built on lies and borrowed money, was crumbling, and in its wreckage, perhaps there was a chance for redemption. He began to speak, haltingly at first, then with a torrent of desperate confessions. He recounted meetings in shadowy offices, vague contracts, facilitators, who always seemed to appear exactly when he needed more money, always with an eager smile and a new solution that only deepened his financial quagmire. He confessed to the gambling, the desperate attempts to recoup losses, the spiraling addiction that consumed him. He was a broken man, stripped bare of all pretense. And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, I saw a glimpse of the son I once knew buried beneath layers of deceit and despair. The anger was still there, a hot ember in my chest, but it was now tempered by a profound sadness. The very next morning, Martha and I were at her office. John, looking utterly defeated but surprisingly compliant, was there too, accompanied by a bewildered-looking public defender. The scene at the Gilded Spoon had done its job. It had shocked him into clarity. Armed with John's confession and Martha's meticulous documentation, we filed the lawsuit, not just against John for the hospitality bill and stolen assets, but crucially, against the shadowy network of predatory lenders he had unwittingly become entangled with. The lawsuit didn't just expose John's deception. It pulled back the curtain on a much larger, organized criminal operation that preyed on vulnerable individuals like my son. The legal battle was fierce and protracted, a true war fought on paper and in courtrooms. The media, alerted by Martha's strategic leaks to a few trusted journalists, seized upon the story. "Elderly mother sue son over multi-million-dollar debt conspiracy," blared headlines. The narrative shifted from my son's petty betrayal to a larger tale of injustice and manipulation, captivating the public. Support poured in from unexpected corners: online communities, advocacy groups for victims of financial fraud, and even other families who recognized the chilling patterns in their own lives. We became a symbol, a rallying cry against hidden exploitation. John, facing the full force of his actions and the legal system, cooperated fully with the authorities, providing crucial testimony that helped dismantle parts of the predatory lending ring. He wasn't absolved of his responsibility, far from it, but his willingness to confront his demons and assist in bringing down a larger criminal enterprise offered a glimmer of hope for his future. He entered a rehabilitation program for gambling addiction, a path he'd resisted for years, and for the first time, truly began to seek help. As for me, the house Thomas and I built, my sanctuary was saved, thanks to Martha's brilliant legal maneuvering and the public outcry. The stolen funds were partially recovered, enough to rebuild my sense of security, if not fully restore my financial health. But the greatest victory wasn't financial. It was personal. I had found my voice, my strength, and I had fought for what was right, not just for myself, but in a strange twist of fate, for my son as well. My teddy bears returned to my table, but now each stitch felt imbued with a new sense of purpose, a quiet testament to resilience. I had confronted the deepest betrayal, navigated a labyrinth of deceit, and emerged not unscathed, but whole. John and I, our relationship, fractured beyond easy repair, embarked on a long, arduous journey of rebuilding, brick by painful brick. There were no grand family dinners, no quick fixes, just the slow, hesitant process of forgiveness and understanding. I had sent him a bill for his childhood, in the form of a lawsuit, yes, but in exposing his hidden world, I had also given him a chance at a new beginning, a path he didn't even know existed. And as for me, I had learned that sometimes the harshest actions are born from the deepest love, and that true strength lies not just in enduring, but in fighting back, fiercely and unequivocally, for your dignity and your truth.